Hey guys, welcome to today's video in which we're going to be looking at the free agency moves made by teams in the NFC North. So like a recap, review, and then grading. If you like the video, please give it a like, and if you like my content, please subscribe because it'll really help me out. Thank you. Without further ado, moving on to the first team, we have the Chicago Bears. The first team we're looking at here is the Chicago Bears. They made a number of quite expensive signings, most notably defensive end Robert Quinn. Hard to feel like they haven't overpaid for him, because although $12 million a year isn't outrageous for a decent edge rusher, a 5-year deal for a guy entering his 10th year in the league seems a bit extreme. They also added Jimmy Graham at tight end, another quite expensive deal for what realistically has been a mediocre tight end for the last couple of years, and he's a long way removed from his all-pro days. I quite like the Nick Foles trade because it has potential as they were able to restructure his contract, only paying him $8 million a year on average. He never really got a chance in Jacksonville after he got injured in his first game and then was replaced by Minshew. But the question is, will he be able to replicate what he did with the Eagles a couple of years ago when he won the Super Bowl and then had another playoff run without their strong offensive line and solid receiving corps? On top of that, they gained some decent secondary depth at quite low prices, so they did an alright job. In terms of departures, their linebacking corps got quite depleted. Leonard Floyd never quite developed like they would have hoped after taking him 9th overall in 2016. They'll be hoping that Quinn will be able to replace him as a more productive and efficient edge rusher. Also lost linebacker Kwiatkowski and Nick Williams from the front seven, so suffered significant departures there. Losing Clinton-Dix is also a bit of a blow because it means their safeties need addressing again for the second off-season in a row to try and find a partner for Eddie Jackson. Overall, I've graded the Bears a C+. Basically, I think they've overpaid for Quinn and Graham, but on the flip side of that, Foles should provide nice competition for Trubisky, so they have a serious chance to improve their quarterback situation heading to next season. Moving on to the next team, we have the Green Bay Packers. They didn't really dip into the free agency market very much at all, and generally the only signings they made were done in order to replace departures and generally at cheaper prices, as shown by the signings of Kirksey and Wagner. In terms of the departures they suffered, they lost linebacker Blake Martinez. Whilst he was a very good tackler, he gained a really large contract off the Giants, so very understandable why the Packers didn't want to pay him. Kirksey was a much cheaper offer, and the talent deficit is relatively limited. Long-time offensive tackle Brian Bulaga also moved on, again gaining quite an expensive deal, and they replaced him with the cheaper Rick Wagner. They also lost Jimmy Graham, quite an expensive deal for a player whose career is in decline, although they did fail to replace him, so they'll have to be looking at the draft in order to get a new tight end, because realistically, Mercedes Lewis is not a starting tight end anymore. Overall, I've graded the Packers a C. It's hard to give them a higher grade after they adopted such a conservative approach. They did at least manage to avoid overpaying any of their players and did a decent job of replacing the players that they lost at cheaper prices with only a slight drop in the talent level. The next team we have is the Minnesota Vikings. Their main acquisition was defensive tackle Michael Pierce, and hopefully for them he will be an upgrade over their ageing and now departing Linval Joseph. They also franchise-tagged safety Anthony Harris, and this should continue to mean that the Vikings have the best safety pairing in the league, along with perennial Pro Bowler Harrison Smith. They're also able to extend Kirk Cousins, meaning he won't be a free agent next year and has 3 years now left on his contract. In terms of departures, they suffered significant losses in the secondary, most notably cornerback Trey Waynes. They also had the players that they lost were also stalwarts of one of the consistently best defensive units over the last 5 years. Xavier Rhodes obviously left after suffering a staggeringly rapid decline. Interesting to see what he'll be able to do in a new environment with the Colts. Also lost veterans along the defensive line in Linval Joseph and Everson Griffin. They also traded away Stephon Diggs, but they were at least able to recuperate significant value for him in the way that the Texans weren't able to do with Hopkins, particularly considering that he was their number 2 receiver behind Adam Thielen. Overall, I've graded the Vikings with a B+. The reason I did this was because they were able to gain significant value back for Stephon Diggs. They gained 4 draft picks, including a first rounder, so they did really well to get that for a player who's been disgruntled for the best part of a year now. On top of that, the other players that they lost, particularly on the defense, were aging and on the decline. The final team in today's video are the Detroit Lions. They significantly bolstered their front seven with the signings of Jamie Collins, Nick Williams and Danny Shelton, continuing their trend of signing former Patriot players. They also signed veteran cornerback Desmond Trufant, along with some depth signings for their secondary. They'll be hoping that Trufant will be able to replace the now departed Darius Slay. On top of that, they signed offensive guard at the top there, whose name I'm not even going to try and say, and they'll be hoping that he keeps Stafford upright and healthy for once after he's had troubles with injuries the last few seasons. In terms of the departures they suffered, Darius Slay was certainly the most notable player who left. It was important for them to at least gain some value for a player who'd fallen out with the coach and clearly wanted out, so getting a 3rd and 5th round pick wasn't too awful. They also replaced departing offensive guard Graham Glasgow with the offensive guard from the Eagles, whose name I can't say, at a significantly lower price. Glasgow is getting $11 million a year off the Broncos, but they're only paying their offensive guard $9 million a year for 2 players I'd say who are of reasonably similar standard. The departing Kennard and Robinson were suitably replaced with Jamie Collins and then Nick Williams and Danny Shelton as defensive tackle. And also the signing of Chase Daniel, who I believe is a much more reliable backup than Jeff Driscoll, gives them a half a plan B if Stafford's to get injured again. Overall, I've given the Detroit Lions a B. I like some of the moves they made, particularly bolstering their front seven. A concern is that they may have overpaid Jamie Collins, who's never had any success anywhere outside of New England. His stint with the Browns was not a good time. Desmond Trufant is potentially a solid replacement for Slay, but obviously is a bit older, so certainly a downgrade there. So I think a B is a slightly generous, but I'm going to say fair grade. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed it, make sure you liked it. And please check out some of my other videos, which I've done the teams in the NFC East and the NFC South. Thank you.